welcome.
Hello.
Dan and I are gonna talk a little bit tonight about habit 3, putting first things first. You wanna start out, Dan?
Sure. For habit 3, putting first things first, it really, for me, it focused on what experiences I had were more of prioritizing and using the 4 endowments. More of, family comes first for me, then work. Then school, then work. Obviously, the more I work at school, the better job I can eventually get. And by a better job, better I can provide for my family.
So if you, let's say your wife's sister was getting married, and from what you said, school would come first, or did you say your
Family comes first, then school.
Okay. So for instance, if your wife's sister was getting married, you would, skip school to go to the wedding on that particular day.
Well, actually, my wife's brother got married recently, my brother-in-law, and they got married on a Thursday. My wife and I were both in the wedding, so the rehearsal dinner was on a Wednesday. I had economics on a Wednesday. And it took a while. I had to choose between school and going to the rehearsal dinner. Rehearsal dinner, not the most important, but still you're part of the wedding, you gotta be there. So after thinking long and hard, I actually did go with family first. The first class I skipped in about almost a year of going to school now.
See, that wasn't a regular habit of yours though, so it was a good balance. I mean,
Yes.
It wasn't something like you dropped school to do
No,
a lot
no,
of things.
and there was a lot of, personal catch-up work, not, assigned by the teacher, just I wanted to make sure I didn't lose out on missing that class.
Well, this habit 3 was a real eye-opener for me. About 15 years ago, I was diagnosed as a workaholic. I went in for some counseling. I had a hard time juggling work, family, and I was raised that work always came first.
Sure.
Over everything. And it was the path of least resistance. It was easier for me to say, okay, anything that comes down the work pipeline has priority. If something came down the family pipeline and it didn't interfere with work, great. If it did interfere with work, no, work came first. Well, my wife kind of got to the point where she was jealous of my job. She thought I loved my job more than
You
I
were
did.
choosing work over her. Sure.
And it was easy enough to say that, and it was easy enough to say, okay, I'm a workaholic, but what do you do with that information? I didn't know about this. First things first. So, over the last week, I laid out a lot of things. I'm putting together a personal mission statement. My wife and I and my 8-year-old were putting together a family mission statement. Believe it or not, he's only 8, but he has 2 or 3 things that he wants to make sure are on that statement. He wants input in this too. So not only did this get me thinking, but the whole family's thinking about it,
Oh, sure.
What's important? I'm
I'm sure Dad is definitely top on that list for him.
He wants his time with Dad.
Absolutely.
And we're gonna make it together. We're not just, throw a bunch of things on a piece of paper and say this is what we're gonna follow. We're gonna put them on there as a group, and we're gonna live by it as a group.
Sure.
And it's an ever-changing process. 3 years down the road, you might want to add something to it. You might want to take something out.
Yeah, for me, it's a little different. I have 2 boys, the oldest one being 3, so we really can't sit down. My wife and I can sit down and kind of, hash out a prioritized list, a nice mission statement. Neither one of them will obviously understand that. Now, does that make it any less important to find time to spend with them? No. But, it's all about prioritizing and looking at the big picture. Obviously, sometimes, he doesn't understand Dad has to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
Reason why Dad's going to school is so Dad can get a better job. the guy gets a better job, I can provide for them. Right now I work 7 days a week. I manage a restaurant, so it's 7 days a week, you know, it's weekend nights. I'm looking to be able to spend more time with them, and that's the ultimate goal. So it's definitely about prioritizing. And
Well, I've always been middle management, never upper management. And I've always looked at, okay, upper management sent this down, they want it done. It should take priority over everything I have going on. And realistically, it shouldn't. It should be this time management matrix that I've been working on here.
with habit 3.
Of habit 3 is it's interesting because everything that comes down the line, you have to take a second and prioritize it. You know, what quadrant does it need to go into?
Sure.
Is it urgent, important? Is it not urgent, but still important? And so forth.
Be self-aware also.
See, what
where
would
it
happen,
falls.
right, what would happen is something would come down the line from upper management saying, you know, we need this done. I would put that right at the top of the list. And then my priorities below that would fall apart.
Sure.
Because,
Sure, the rest of the work would,
you know, everything
would hurt
else.
because of it.
So by the time I got this project done, this had fallen apart, the rest of it, so then I'd get that straightened up, then another thing would come down.
And then you find yourself always at work.
You'll find yourself always at work, correct. And looking back, a lot of those projects that came down from upper management, they weren't urgent, they were very important.
Sure.
But they were not urgent. So I wish I would have had this years ago, to help prioritize some of this stuff. You know, I took management classes that taught how to prioritize, but it didn't talk about, you know, so much the fact of these 4 quadrants, and you put it in a quadrant. And, you know, and to spend time in quadrant 2 for prevention. I worked in safety for quite a few years, and we always talked about it's much easier to prevent an accident than it is to clean up after one.
Oh, absolutely.
So, you know, I worked in that field, but I never applied it to my personal life. For instance, wife maintenance. You know, I'm not talking about bad maintenance, I'm just talking about spending